Hi, this is StrategyCast, where smart marketers and bold business thinkers share the plays behind brand breakthroughs. I'm Lori Jones, President and CEO of Avocet Communications. What if the biggest reason your pipeline isn't converting has nothing to do with your messaging and everything to do with trust? Today, we're unpacking how declining trust, AI-generated noise, and short-term marketing pressure are reshaping how buyers evaluate brands. You'll learn how to build credibility in skeptical markets, why attention metrics can be misleading, and a practical framework to turn trust into a growth engine. Joining me today is MJ Patton, who brings a sharp perspective on marketing to highly skeptical audiences and how trust becomes a competitive advantage when done right. Her approach gives marketers a clear, practical way to build trust in environments where buyers are wired to doubt everything.
A competitive edge starts with strategy, and strategy starts with knowing how to develop one. StrategyCast is a leading marketing podcast that serves up strategic insights, trends, and tips to help separate your business from the pack. Tune in weekly as host Lori Jones interviews bold marketing leaders who have priceless wisdom and are willing to share. Each episode explores cutting-edge approaches that have proven instrumental in transforming brands into industry trailblazers.
Welcome to the show, MJ.
Hi, Lori. Thank you for having me.
I am so psyched to talk about this topic. I think it's just such a meaty one, right? Before we get there, tell us a little bit more about your journey.
Yeah, so I've spent over 15 years in B2B marketing, primarily in IT and cybersecurity, very complex service environments. And really, the common thread across every organization is that I've dealt with highly informed, skeptical buyers. They're not your typical impulse buyers. They are all about risk management. And I think that I don't know why I ended up in that field, but it's something that I really have come to appreciate because a lot of the work that I have been doing and the things that I've been doing at Logically is helping organization navigate the IT and cybersecurity landscape, but making sure that we are building trust with them, we're building relationships, we're diving into that instead of just awareness. But that's been my past 15 years. Yeah.
At what point did you start looking at trust not just as brand value, which is where I think it sits for most companies, but truly something around marketing strategy?
I don't think it was a single moment where that happened. It was just something that I realized as a pattern that I just couldn't ignore. You see campaigns that generate leads, but then they don't convert. You see the engagement, but then there's no progression. And when you start digging into it, it's not a messaging problem. It's really a trust problem.
Right.
You think about these IT and cybersecurity leaders that are dealing with high stake environments, right? This is the reason why I actually went into IT is I love the fact that everything I work on, it's impacting people in their businesses, right? Like we are impacting lives when it comes to that. And these IT leaders, that's how serious they are about their environments. So unless they feel confident in the solution and the company behind it, they're not going to move forward.
Yeah.
And so it ended up over time being this layer that had to be a focus because just doing your typical marketing and your kind of transactional activity, that wasn't going to move the needle.
Yeah. It's so interesting. We believe that trust is everything at Avocet. We believe it's the number one reason why people do not buy. And it's why we've developed IP around developing and building out trust architectures for each and every one of our clients, which we'll get into in another show, by the way. You've looked at this and you coined this as a trust recession. Those are big words. It's a trust recession. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So what I mean by trust recession, it's about the measurable long-term decline in how people view trust overall. I did some research around this, and if you look at the data in the 1970s, about 46% of Americans said most people could be trusted. Just think about it. When you were a kid, you would just run over to your neighbor's house, right? You knew everyone on the block.
Right.
Are you in that same position today?
No.
Probably not.
No.
And today we're seeing it's about 25%. That's drastic,
Yeah.
right? And then you layer on what's going on with AI, right? We have deep fake technologies that are there. We have AI agents, and you don't know what's real, what's not real. You have the media implications. And so everyone is starting to get into a very defensive posture. And so when I talk about this recession, we're seeing it at a society level. And that is coming down to the buyer level when they're making decisions about their business or, their workplace or whatnot. And we have to change how we approach that relationship if we're going to help move pipeline, create relationships, etc.
I could not agree more. And just to bring this full circle, the number you shared is 25% trust. 75% do not trust out of the chute. And there are a lot of different reasons for that. Preconceived notions, the fact that there's just apathy has set in general regarding that sort of thing. And just we're wired, I think, very, very differently today because of a lot of the things that you just mentioned that are happening with social media, with the media, quite frankly, with our government, with for years and years and years and decades, this trust has just been eroding. AI has accelerated the lack of trust. Are marketers underestimating how defensive buyers have become?
I think a lot of them are.
Yeah.
I don't think they realize the impact it's really having on the buyer's journey. And so you have several marketers who are doing the same types of tactics, thinking, I'm just going to drive the same campaigns. And if anything, oh, now I have AI, let me just do more of that. Right? Which is actually like causing the trust to decrease even more because you have buyers who are now not trusting the information we're putting out there because it's AI work slop.
Right. Do you see a point in the buyer journey, through the funnel itself where trust is breaking down the most, regarding, awareness or, going through the funnel in my mind right now, top of mind awareness versus, interest versus intent versus, an actual signal that the brand now is pushing out to them. Where do you see it breaking down the most?
I think it's really the top and middle.
Yeah.
Where we're seeing the most breakdown. And I believe it is because we have tools that allow us to scale a lot.
Mhm.
We use terminology that is very vague. We use terms that are buzzwords, right? I was laughing about this because in the food industry, what's the big term right now? Protein.
Right.
Everything has protein. Dunkin' Donuts has protein. Starbucks has protein. You go to Chipotle and they have just a cup of meat and they're like, it's the ultimate protein bowl. And it's like, but it's a cup of meat. But,
Right. Yeah.
but they've hooked on to protein. And we see that in the industry with AI. Everything has AI. Is it AI or is it automation? Right?
Yeah.
Does it have this? And you see that with cybersecurity. In the IT industry, all these organizations that have said, this is, we offer these type of cybersecurity solutions, but when you dive into it, that's not the same thing. My version of cybersecurity is different from that version of cybersecurity, but we're using very broad terms. We are not showing the buyers exactly how it is built out, so that way they are better informed. And so we reduce that like buying disconnect that happens during the process.
And I think, what we're not taking into consideration during the consideration phase even is that everyone's reality is very, very different. And really where you're able to build trust is top of funnel with the awareness side of things. It's just, let's face facts, brand is everything when it comes to trust and messaging. And when they're not aligned, that is when lack of trust happens. What do you think from an optimization standpoint, Where do you think marketing has gone wrong and what we optimize for?
Right now, it's a volume play. That
Mhm.
is what we're optimizing. We're thinking about MQLs. We're talking about click-through rates and just how can we get as much pipeline at any means possible,
Right,
right? And there is a shift that is happening, um, where we want to get away from the gumball machine, that marketing has turned into. But that I think the whole trust piece that is helping us push towards a different way of measuring success for marketing. It's been very short-sighted where, it as long as I use a tactic that is going to get me more leads, it doesn't matter.
right,
But if
right,
that customer comes in and then ends up leaving, there's a stat saying that more than 80% of buyers report dissatisfaction with the provider that they ultimately choose.
right.
So think
Well,
about that huge gap,
yeah,
right?
it is a gap. And we go as far as to build alignment grids for, the commercial teams, the retail teams, whoever it is that we're working with, to make sure that there is alignment between every stage of the funnel, including top of funnel, and what it means when you're interacting with people firsthand, following up with an email, following up with a phone call, meeting them at a trade show, whatever it might be. If we're not fully aligned as a marketing team, as a commercial team, a BD team, whatever the case might be, then that hurts that builds that lack of trust that we're talking about. It takes a lot of effort to create that kind of alignment.
Yeah, it's across the entire journey that that customer has to go through
Right.
and making sure that every team is okay with that. And unfortunately, the pressures that we are dealing with as leaders, right? Um, we are expected to deliver a certain number. And if we don't hit that, then there's this scarcity mindset, like there's not enough. So I have to go after everyone. And that's not helpful either, right? It takes a lot of guts to be like, no, there is enough like opportunity out there, but it means we have to be looking at it differently if we're bringing in the right people that are the right fit for our organization, right?
Well, and I think a lot of times our teams get stuck in vanity metric mode when it comes to capturing attention and measurement. They're so focused on impressions and CTRs and the CACs that are involved in everything that they forget about the fact that less might be more when it comes to building trust. And the tendency is just big numbers that really ultimately mean nothing at the end of the day with pipeline management.
Yeah, when you measure the building of trust, you see it in your conversion rates
Right.
because people will then want to do business with you because they feel very confident in the services that you're going to deliver, right? They believe in the impact that you're selling. And then the fact that they stay on with you and continue to purchase additional services, continue to be advocates for your brand, that ends up reiterating the trust that you have built with that customer.
Right.
And I think if we, instead of us focusing on, here's a bunch of volume that we're pushing down into a funnel that's broken, where we have no trust, and instead we dove into, well, why are people not like trusting us?
Right.
Are we not giving them enough information? Are we not hitting on their pain points? Are we not giving enough proof points? Are we not specific enough about the services or the functionality that is addressing the concern that is keeping them from continuing on with us?
Yeah.
That's where we should optimize. And then you don't need as much volume because you have more people agreeing and then staying on for a longer period of time,
Right.
right?
Well, and those retention rates are what lead to referral.
Yes.
They're what lead to, lifetime value. All, better, scores when it comes to customer satisfaction. All these sort of things are what really create, the better outcomes when it comes to trust. How should marketers rethink success metrics if trust is the goal? We've just given a few examples right there.
Y- it's definitely a combination. What we've been doing here at Logically has been really looking at Are we seeing more people searching for Logically? Because they're seeing us out there, they're seeing the proof points, they're seeing us talking about things that are relevant to them and the pain points that they're facing.
Right.
But in addition to that, we're looking at conversion rates.
Right.
How fast is the sales process going, right? I had this conversation actually yesterday where marketing is not a gumball machine. We are a co-pilot along the buyer's journey. We are the partner that helps reduce friction during the entire journey. Okay. And so what?
I said I could not agree with you more.
Well, and this was to our sales team. I
Right.
was like, how many of you have brought in your peer marketer into the deal?
Right.
Right? Because we hear things differently and we could identify, oh, there's fear there. There's hesitation here. Is there something we can pull in along the process in order to help build that trust? Because there's still a little bit of a disconnect.
Right.
And when you have that type of alignment internally, that's where you see all of this movement that happens. And then as we talked about, it's the retention rates that should start to increase. You should start to see more referrals coming through because people want to talk about, hey, I found this great organization. I found this great solution. You should use them too, because they're not going to refer someone that they're not happy with.
Right. That's exactly right. You actually developed an incredible flywheel. You call it the Trust Flywheel Framework, and it involves sparking connection, earning trust, fueling evangelism, and it's incredible information. Starting with connection, what does relevance actually look like in practice?
Relevance is really, truly understanding. I know this may sound simple, but it's truly understanding your ICP and the challenges that they're dealing with. So, for example, we deal with mid-sized organizations. We are a mid-sized organization. So, fortunately, I have my IT leadership, and that I'm very close with, and I can be like, what is causing you headaches? What are
Right.
you dealing with? Right. And so when we talk about our messaging, it is with this entire, perspective of what that company is dealing with at that moment in time, because they're all struggling with that. Like in mid-sized organizations, they're getting bombarded with all types of generic messaging.
Right.
What we have changed is the fact that these companies, they're large, right? They're operating at a large scale. However, they don't have enterprise budgets.
Right.
So in their scenario, when they have limited time, they have a lot of risk that they have to consider. How can we help them prioritize? How can we help, reduce that risk for them? How can we help them look like superstars to the rest of their organization because they have internal fears that they have to deal with, right? Of like, how can I handle this and get the buy-in? And when they feel like they're on a little island, right? And it's getting into that psyche. That's what that piece is.
And it is speaking the buyer's language is what you're talking about here. It's meeting the prospects where they are. It's humanizing the brand. And I think those three areas are where most marketers get it wrong. They're talking internal language instead of external language. They're dictating instead of truly understanding what the prospect needs and where they are. And then the brands are so stale and outdated and not at a level that is typically commensurate with the product quality.
Yeah, we do a lot of customer interviews, and I value that so much because I just ask them about their day.
Right.
What are you dealing with? What are the stressors? For example, we had a customer who it was a one person shop, and they were just purchased by private equity, and now she was required to present to a board.
Wow.
She's like, I don't even know how to do this.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get this information from, like a Google search,
Right.
Or like use ChatGPT to develop,
No,
That doesn't happen from there,
no,
right?
it doesn't.
And it was those type of conversations that were like, okay, this is something that you have to deal with. Probably a lot of your peers are dealing with that as well. Do we have something that can help support you and make you feel heard? Right?
Right.
Like this is truly relevant for me. And then how do we disseminate that when in all the like awareness channels that we're at? Right?
Yeah, that's great. And earning trust is the second part of the flywheel here. When it comes to earning trust, where do you feel most marketers are falling short?
Actual proof points.
Yeah,
The outcomes tied to proof points.
right.
There's a lot of very broad stroke kind of proof points. But you say that you deliver great customer service. Well, show me how you do that.
Right.
Right? Either show me here's the framework, but then on top of it, does that compare to, let's say, the competitor? Do you see X amount of lift in comparison to what's happening in the industry? Is there, like, what are your scores, satisfaction scores? And having all of that available during that stage, so people, when they're reviewing it, they're reviewing actual details, right? And it's not an after the fact.
Yeah,
I hope this works out.
I think that's fantastic. You know what's really interested, we refer to that as proof of performance in a lot of different areas. There are also a lot of competitors that are not truthful about the numbers that they're releasing in market. We, of course, don't allow our clientele to not be truthful. But we were recently conducting a voice of customer interview on behalf of a client. And of course, we were inquiring about, we had a bunch of questions about some of the competition. And in one situation, the competition was promoting a percentage that was way below the norm regarding product delivery. And so we were able to, with the voice of customer interview, take a look at what they were promoting, what that former customer had reported was actual, and know that the brand, that there was no truth to what they were promoting. And it gives you a unique insight that I think is very, very valuable when it comes to equipping the sales team, the biz dev team, the strategic account managers, whatever it might be, with information that can combat that without using the competitor name, without using a number so that they would connect the dots. But the value there is unsurmountable when it comes to the sort of things that we're really looking for in building trust.
Yeah, the way that we ended up addressing this here at Logically is with our Logic On conference.
Yeah.
So I believe we're the only MSP that has an end user conference. Typically, there's several events where they pull in experts from technology companies, but our entire brand is about the people behind these services and the level of expertise that we internally have. So by having an event where we have each of these experts on stage teaching frameworks, and even beyond that, developing worksheets that help our customers as well as our buyers go through the decision-making process. This is a different layer. It's not about him telling you about this industry trend, you should go fix it and, buy our tech in order to do that. Instead, it's, hey, we understand the challenges you're dealing with. We know how you have to process this. We are going to help you go along that journey with you to get you to the response that you need for your environment, because that is the level of expertise we are providing. And that was the impact, right?
And you just explained the third part of your flywheel really well, which is fueling evangelism. It's such a great approach when it comes to that. How do you intentionally create advocates that may not necessarily be a customer yet, or they are a customer and you just want them to feel that they are able to, create motion and signals and positivity in whatever type of communication it might be on your behalf?
I'm very big on give to get.
Mm.
If you function from the perspective of what is best for them, how can I help them, it will come back in spades.
Yeah.
And even if someone isn't a customer, listen, I don't, it would be great if they worked with us. However, for the customer, I want them to work with someone that's the best fit for them. That
Right.
may not be us, right? Maybe that'll be in a few years, right? When things change. But I want to make it as easy as possible for them to know if we are that right fit for them. And if not, where should they go? What should they be looking for in order to find the right fit for them? And I think when you're thinking about them instead of yourself, that's where that magic happens. That's how you end up creating evangelists outside of just your customer base. If you treat everyone with that same level of respect.
Yeah. One thing that we talked about in the pre-show, and I just love this, and I think it's a real basic for a lot of us, and that is utilizing ethical marketing as a competitive advantage. With the example I just used of you with the audience today on the Voice of Customer interviews that we did, and this tidbit of information that we found out that was very factual regarding performance, we could have taken that and run, but we would not have felt good about it. The brand would not felt good about it. Upper management would not feel good about it. It's all about how you turn that into more of an ethical response from a marketing standpoint. What do you mean by turning ethical marketing into competitive advantage?
It's really centering about what's the right thing to do,
Right.
and not about growth strategy. It's about what is right for the customer, not manipulating claims, not inflating your messaging, not misrepresenting your organization for short-term gain.
Right.
And I do believe the pressures that marketers are getting from leadership about specific volume metrics, it is causing them to, from a place of scarcity, right? They're taking tactics that are just unethical.
Right. Where
You
do you
know,
see brands crossing the line today?
oh geez, there's a laundry list.
Yeah.
Anything. I personally think vague messaging is on that spectrum. If you are promising something that you don't actually deliver, and especially if it is something that has major impacts in that organization. In our industry with cybersecurity, I think that is one of those areas.
Right.
You are putting an entire business at risk. There's hundreds of people that can lose their jobs because of an attack that can happen to an organization. So I find that area that's unethical on my part. And I'm very, very passionate on that piece. But there's things like ambulance chasing.
Mm-hmm.
It is doing smear campaigns against your competitors. It is using fear and uncertainty, doubt in your messaging in order to cause people to call you back or take action. It is fake social proof. I saw this recently where a company faked a review and was promoting it on LinkedIn. Person doesn't exist. Quote doesn't exist. Why is that happening?
Yeah. I don't even know how you as a human being can feel right about that. Like truly, I mean, there's the human element of that, that I think is really important here. How do you feel good about yourself knowing that you've just done that? I mean, it's a lie.
I will go back to kind of, and this might go into a more psychology type of discussion, but I do believe these are individuals that are coming from a place of scarcity.
Yep.
They are coming from a place of fear that they will lose their jobs if they do not hit these numbers. And so it's everything is out on the table. Think about, an animal that's cornered.
Yeah.
What are they going to do? It could be the nicest, fluffiest bunny in the world, but you get it cornered and, the teeth come out, right? And I think what we're seeing is that this increasing pressure on short-term gains has put a lot of marketers into that position. And they have had to take these type of tactics. Same thing on sales. I have had meetings just put on my calendar, don't know the person, just, and I've responded to those individuals saying, "How dare you come onto my calendar?"
That is unbelievable. It happens to me as well. It is unbelievable. We had a situation recently where the whole company was on a calendar invite. We were all researching how it even entered the scene, entered our system, and ultimately one person had clicked yes, not knowing what it was, and that's where it started, but it's also where it ended. Yeah.
Well, and you use that tactic, you think that's going to help, but actually it's so detrimental to your
Yeah.
entire brand
It's
because
such a good example.
yeah, from the beginning, you're automatically called out as this is an untrusting organization. I don't
Yeah.
want to do business with them. And now because of what's been happening with trust and this deterioration of trust in the market, you've seen an upsurgence of people going into their peer networks to get referrals, right? And to double check on companies. They do not trust what you're putting out there. They don't trust the methods you're using. So instead, they're going to their peer groups and they're asking, "Hey, Lori, do you know about this company? Have you worked with them?" And if they don't get a response, they're moving on. They're not even entertaining a conversation. You're
Yeah.
seeing more and more of that happening.
Yeah. We're almost to the end of our show here. I want to quickly talk about measurement because it's critical when it comes to all of this. And trust can absolutely feel intangible. How do you actually measure it?
It's several components. I mentioned this a little earlier. You're looking for branded search because that should start to increase. You should start to see direct traffic increase. You should start to see referrals increase. Those are very tangible. In addition to that, I would double check your sales cycle length, conversion rates, and how quickly the process happens. That's going to let you know if you're building that trust during every single interaction. So there is no single trust score. It's really a combination of all of these factors to say, yes, over time, we are building trust.
Yeah. I think NPS, we haven't talked about, I was trying to pull that out of my brain about 20 minutes ago and it just hit me. But NPS, I think, is a good internal score to see how that is increasing over time as well. I think NPS scores can be very misleading externally because such high scores like a 74, 78, which in my world is a C. So, and the audience is going to think that as well, but it really is a good gauge on measuring that, year over year. As we are saying goodbye to one another today and to our audience, I want to ask you one last question. If a marketer is generating traffic and leads, but still struggling to convert pipeline, how can they tell if the real issue is a lack of trust with their audience? And what is one practical step they can take to start rebuilding that trust?
I would suggest jumping on the sales calls.
Nice.
Sit in on the calls. You will tell. You will tell by body language. And from there, you will know if you need to adjust for something, if you're missing something in the sales process, in training, in the messaging, or whatnot. And I would even speak up. If you see that hesitation, ask what's going on.
Yeah.
Call it out of like, "Hey, I see that hesitation. Can you tell me more?"
Right.
And then shut up.
Listen.
Just listen to understand what's going on. Because given everything that you're putting out there, given everything that sales is talking about, if they are still kind of shifty, or they're not engaged, trust is not there.
Yeah. Nonverbal Communication 101, Speech Comm Major, one of the best classes I've ever had. Reading those nonverbals is truly, I think, a gift for a lot of people. MJ, it has been such a pleasure having you on the show today. What is the best way for our listeners to get in contact with you?
Definitely LinkedIn. Follow me or connect with me, MJ Patent, like the patent office. And I'd be happy to connect.
That's great. And you can find me on LinkedIn as well, Lori Sartorius Jones there. MJ Patent. Thank you again so much for your appearance on StrategyCast.
Thank you, Lori.
That's a wrap. Thanks for joining us on today's show. We hope your strategic brains are spinning with new ideas and bold inspiration that will elevate your strategies and marketing know-how.